Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Lead Skill Show. I'm your host, Oscar, and as always, I'm glad to have you all here, just listening to us speak to leaders in the industry, tell us about their journey, the challenges they overcame, and just basically tell us the story of their entrepreneurial journey so that hopefully we can inspire you and many more to start your own journey as well. Today's going to be a great episode. With me, I have Candy Messer, founder of Affordable Bookkeeping and Payroll, and lead speaker of the Freedom to Thrive Summit as well. Thank you so much for being here, Candy. Thank you for taking the time today to join us.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. Thank you so much. And, just the first question that I like asking, can you please introduce yourself, the company and what you do?
Sure. Like you said, I founded Affordable Bookkeeping and Payroll Services. I actually founded it back in 2002 because someone who knew what I did in a corporate job, which was a full charge bookkeeper, asked me to help her because her husband had a business and he had her doing, paying the bills, invoicing the customers, and she was supposed to be reconciling the accounts and she hated it and said, please help. So she actually asked me for a few months. I finally gave in. And once I did, I realized, well, now I have to get a business license and a home operating permit. I have to buy the software and I have to do all these things. That was going to bring in some additional expense. And I thought, well, I need a few more clients to make it worth it. And so that's what I did. I went, found a few more. So then I did my regular job. And then on the side, I was doing this, going to client locations. And then about a year and a half later, my husband said, quit your job, just do your business. People really love the service you're offering. And that was a scary thing to give up a guaranteed paycheck. And now, it's dependent on whatever that I'm doing to draw in business and, be able to perform the services. So that's how it all started. And then since then, of course, I've grown my team. I currently have 11 staff. We are now a fully remote team. So we are located in multiple states. And I have people who had retired from a job before that didn't want to fully retire. And so they want to do something fun, have a few hours a day. I have some parents with young children. And so I've been able to give them a flexible schedule and be able to work from home and not have what I used to have, which was that traditional in the office. Everyone had a set schedule. So we've definitely, transitioned over time, but that's kind of what we do. I serve, generally speaking, service-based business owners for their bookkeeping and compliance. We're also a payroll company. So anyone with 1 to, I'd say ideally 40. We do have clients that have more, but that's kind of the range that we prefer to serve. And I'm also now Clockwork certified in operational efficiency. So I say I give time and financial freedom so that entrepreneurs can learn how to take a real vacation and enjoy time away.
Wow, that was a great introduction. Thank you for that. It was very, very complete.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, something that you mentioned right in the beginning, how someone that knew you was the one that actually asked you, right? And I think that a lot of the times that's how a lot of business start, right? You're not even thinking about it, but you realize someone else needs a service or a product, you have it, you're able to do it, and then it just starts, right, as a favor to someone else, but then you actually end up creating a complete business from that. So I think that's great. And thank you for the introduction. There was something else that you mentioned there, and I just wanted to ask you. So you're fully remote. Did the fully remote started after the pandemic, or how do you guys work before the pandemic? Were you all in one office, or just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. I originally, when I started in office, my first hire was in 2006. And so we were obviously together in one space. And I had at one point up to 9 people in the office with me. And in 2018, I hired one of my employees. And the day that I hired her, her mother passed away later in that day and lived in another state. And so then she told me, I have to help take care of the estate. I'm going to have to be back and forth. And, is that going to be okay? And I said, of course, and so she was able to take time off as needed. And then about 6 months later, she came to me and said, this is just really difficult because I have to go back and forth so much. I probably should just quit my job. And I said, well, I've been toying with the idea of having work from home. What if we used you as a test case? And let's just test the processes, our systems, the software, how we're working together. And she agreed. And so I started it really in late 2018. In 2019, I then started having different employees work from home 1 day a week. So the first one was at home all the time, but then a different staff member, one might be off on a Monday, another one off on a Tuesday, and we were testing that out. And then we started going a couple more days a week. So we still had some people in the office, but each day there were a couple people working from home. Of course, COVID came along and we technically were still considered essential. So I could have theoretically had everyone still come to the office. But in early March, my lease was coming due. And so I decided to just downsize, just have a small office space with an admin. And I could also go if I needed to, but everyone else was going to work from home. That was like again, the beginning of March. And then middle of March comes COVID. And in California, where I was at the time too, declaration, like everyone should stay home if possible. And so I just told the staff, start working from home. We're already going to be moving out of this office space anyway and downsizing. And so honestly, it was fabulous that we had practiced everything ahead of time. We had moved to VoIP phones. We didn't have hardline phones anymore. And we had a chat system in place. We had a lot of things just online. So it just made the transition really easy.
Wow, I love that. I resonate a lot with what you said. I helped one of my clients was a logistics company a few years ago, and I remember that they started doing remote. They started as a remote company back in like 2015, 16. And they then got, like a virtual office, and then they actually got a space. So it was the other way around for them. They just had everyone at home, and then they got an office because clients wanted to go to an office, right? And so they started doing that. But yeah, I think that just what you did and what they did was something that help you guys, through the pandemic, and just not have all of a sudden someone forced you to, oh my God, all of a sudden we need to work from home, right? So they had a lot of systems. You were working your systems as well, a couple of years before that started. And that brings me to the next question. Were those systems that you were putting in place and creating something that you had already gotten certified in clockwork and that helped you do that, or you started doing those and then that came afterwards? I'm just curious to know a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, all our systems and processes, we did that way before Clockwork. I hadn't even heard of the book Clockwork until I believe it was probably 2020, late 2022, I believe it was. And then so I read the book. It's by Mike Michalowicz. Some people may recognize his name. Like Profit First is his most well-known book. But Clockwork is on operational efficiency and having the business owner step away, ideally for 4 weeks. And that doesn't mean you take a vacation necessarily for 4 weeks and you're completely gone, but that makes the business run without you. Your staff has to be empowered. Someone needs to be able to run payroll. Someone needs to be able to handle finances and things like that too. And so you find where the problems lie in the business by stepping out. So you don't just say one day, okay, all of a sudden I'm going to be gone for 4 weeks, right? You have to be putting things in place and then you test the system. So when I did this in my own company, and so again, I learned about in 2022, read the book. In 2023, I decided to join the accelerator program to actually have guidance on how to do this. And as I was doing it, I was thinking there's so many people like me who work a lot who don't know all the things that they should be doing, and this is definitely a resource for them. But as I was going through that program, the first thing they said was, don't worry about the 4 weeks now, schedule a 1 week vacation. And if that's too hard, start with a couple days, right? But start with something. Otherwise, you put it off and you just keep saying, well, I'll get to it at some point. But so I did. I scheduled the 1 week away, came back, said, were there any issues? And really they were like, nope, no problems. But then you're like, well, 1 week, people could kind of put things off, until you come back. So maybe there were some challenges there, but they didn't really surface. So then a few months later, I did 2 weeks away. Were there any problems? By that point, I'd already taught someone how to run the payroll and do some of those things that I was doing. So again, it can be done without me there. And then I did 3 weeks, came back. Were there any issues? And then 4 weeks. So in 1 year, I actually stepped out for a total of 10 weeks to give the company the opportunity to really start, learning and handling things and empowering the team. Now, that doesn't mean I was on vacation for 10 weeks. I was doing other things that I'm sure, like most entrepreneurs are like me too, that you have things on your list, like I'll get to that one day, right? I need to create a course, or I'm going to do, these certain things, and you don't always have time. So during those times where I was like, I am not available unless there's a true emergency, and then the operations person could reach out if necessary. But just those simple questions like, I don't know how to do this, right? You can't reach out. But we were able to have time. I was able to have time to focus on some of the things that I had wanted to do and I hadn't really had the opportunity to do before that, which was really exciting for me too.
I love that. Just another question there. The 1 week, then the 2 weeks, and the 3 weeks, and the 4 weeks. Were all of those 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks you were not answering the phone, you were not answering emails, or were you at least, a little bit, oh wow, okay.
No, awesome. No emails. Basically, I would forward my inbox to operations manager, and she would see the emails that were coming in. If anything needed to be handled, she could take a look at it, make sure a customer was getting a response or asking another team member to do it. If there was anything that she felt I needed to see when I came back, she just kept those. And then when I came back, it was given, she would send me some of the emails, a few at a time. So I didn't get bombarded. But she told me, I remember at one point, she said, like, you could get hundreds of emails a day sometimes, and you might need a total of 20 when you come back. So there's so much that comes to the inbox that really doesn't need to be handled by me. Even other people can do that. And some of them could just be deleted because it's just like a notification of something. But for us, like for instance, with QuickBooks, and we run payroll for clients sometimes, or there's a notice, that comes for a client, and we're like in their bank, even because we do bookkeeping for them. We have our own access to their bank account, so we can pull statements. So a lot of times the banks will send a statement and saying, or a notice that says your statement is available, so those could just be deleted. And so it's amazing to see, really, when you step away, how little really needs your attention if you're training your staff properly.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. And I had a similar thing to you. I didn't hear about, Clockwork, the book, or anything like that up until the 20s. But back in the 2010s, I had my own music business. We had our own, OEM private label brands. We distributed across the country. And I was also part of the board of directors of a nonprofit that had to do with electronic recycling, something completely different. But I was very active in the speaker space. And so I got invited as a keynote speaker to different conferences. And that actually forced me, while running the other business, to create certain systems so that I would be able to run everything, from the phone or from a laptop or something. And this was way before, 2013 to like 2018. And there was a personal emergency. It was a personal situation where I had to step out for like 4.5 weeks. And I basically, from one day to the other, was like, hey guys, this is what's happening. Here's everything. You take care of this, you take care of this. The accountant will take care of the, the bank situation, payments, whatever. And I need to leave. And I didn't even know how much time I was going to leave, right? It ended up, again, going up to 4.5 weeks. Fortunately enough, I came back and the business had not, it hadn't gone bankrupt. It hadn't fallen down. It wasn't broke and everything. There were, of course, certain things that only I could have taken care of, but there were very few, and that taught me the importance of systems. So I love that. That's why I'm very interested in all of that. But, just going back to, the original line of questioning, I know that you mentioned in the beginning, you got your first client because someone else asked you to help. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got, how did you go about getting the next few customers to, just get that, like you were saying, right? There were going to be some expenses. You needed more people to cover them. How do you go about that?
Yeah. So what happened after I got the first client, I actually went to someone I knew. I happened to be on the PTA board of the elementary school where my kids were going. And there was another mom on the board who also did what I was getting into doing as a business. Now, of course, I'd done it again in the corporate job, but I just approached her and I said, oh, by the way, I've decided I'm going to do this and help, some clients. So if you ever hear of someone that isn't a good fit for you, it might be good for me. And she said, oh, do you want someone? I actually have a client right now that I need to hand off. It's a little more difficult. They actually have two companies. They're interrelated. It's construction and interior design. And the person kind of commingles all the things, even though they're two entities. It's a lot of work. I don't have time anymore. And so I said, sure. So she introduced me, took me to the client, and showed me all the things I needed to know. And so that was my customer number 2 and 3, basically. And then my CPA that I had at the time learned I was doing this. And he's like, oh, I have customers that the books are a mess when they come to me. It's hard for me to do taxes. Can I refer some clients to you? And that's how it started. And then, of course, once I began an actual office building space where before I used to go to client locations, at that point, then I joined a chamber, and started networking and, built relationships that way too. So that's how the business actually started to grow.
I love that. That's great. That just by putting yourself out there and started talking to people, they started referring you to their clients. And how has that changed over the years? Are you still only getting clients from networking, or what have you done that has worked for you?
So I do have a podcast myself too. And so actually one of the things that I did when COVID hit was a lot of the educational things. And I was talking about, if you are going to claim a PPP loan, this is what you need to do. If you have the employee retention tax credit, you can claim, you can do this. And then at one point, it used to be you had to pick one or the other. And then the rules changed. So I did an episode saying, well, as long as you can do this and use these wages and not, and I was explaining the whole thing to educate them, again, because so many businesses were cash strapped and this was going to be really helpful for them. And then someone commented on that episode and said, would you be willing to show us actually how to fill out the paperwork? Because I was just doing kind of information higher level. Yeah. And I said, okay, sure. So I recorded step by step how to do it. And I had so many people watching that video. I mean, there was probably over 100,000 views on YouTube of that video. And so many people commenting on that saying, thank you so much. A lot of people will only show you this one little bit, but then you have to pay. And so I helped a lot of people. just by doing that. But then many of them were nervous because it's the IRS, it's government. If you don't do
Yeah.
it right, you're not going to get the money. And so they would say, can you help me actually file the forms? And so that ended up bringing about a whole nother area of work that I hadn't done before. It never existed before, right? And it was only around for a couple of years. You can only claim the credit for a couple of years. You can't do it any longer. But that actually gave me the opportunity to serve more people. And they found out about me just from YouTube, right? And then, of course, networking, I still do in person. A lot of people will just do Google searches, And then professionals, again, like a CPA, if there's a business banker and someone comes in for a loan, they need to have documentation and they don't have a good P&L, someone says, I don't know how to do those things. They can refer to us and then we can put those books together, give them good financial reports so they can get the loans that they need.
Nice. I love that. And I think it's a great way of just building trust, right? And relationships, just having that organic content where you're educating others. I love that. I've always tried to do, what I like calling education-based marketing, just value-based marketing, giving something up front and then, starting building the trust and the relationship. And I think that just shows that it works, but also, it builds your authority, right? It builds you as a authority figure, the thought leadership. So I think it's great. And I know that you're still doing that. So you say you have your podcast, you're still networking now, you have the summit coming up. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about how the summit came along, who's speaking, who is it for, and what are you guys going to talk about?
Sure. Well, I've had my podcast for 6 years now, and I interview one person at a time. One episode airs, so every Tuesday, every Friday, I have guest episodes. And then in the last maybe 3 or 4 months, I started doing a quick tip episode myself where I'm answering one question. But that's only one episode at a time, right? And so I have, at this point, over 500 episodes. But you still have to find that one tip that you're looking for in the episodes. And so what I decided to do was have a summit. It's called Freedom to Thrive, and it's aimed at entrepreneurs who are seeking sustainable success, and they need, clarity, confidence, or control in their businesses. And so what I decided to do is bring together multiple people in one day on different topics and have them each. So it's still interview style like we're doing right now. I'll be talking with them, asking them questions and getting information to the entrepreneur, but they'll have multiple experts in one day and being able to get that information. And then of course they'll have resources that can follow those people and learn more if they, find something that resonates with them. But my whole passion is really educate entrepreneurs so they could be successful because too many businesses fail. A lot of people start a business because they need to, but they don't know all the things, or in my situation, right? When I started, I didn't plan to be an entrepreneur. Someone just asked me and I didn't know all the things. I had to learn. And thankfully, I took the time to really look into all the things to make sure I had a proper business license. I knew what to do when I hired someone and did the payroll. I knew I had to make estimated tax payments. But a lot of people don't know these things. And if you don't do them, the government is going to give you penalties and interest for you didn't file this on time. And they're not going to care that you say, well, I didn't know. They'll say, well, it was your responsibility to know. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing really is get the information out there. And again, not just in finance, which is what I do, but it could be marketing, human resources, it could be legal, how to scale your company successfully, understanding how to pay off debt, what's good debt, what's bad debt, just so many different topics that are really helpful to the entrepreneur.
Okay. And you said that it's for entrepreneurs that are looking for clarity, confidence, and what was the other C?
And control.
And control. Okay. Awesome. So if anyone, here is listening, you're an entrepreneur, definitely, go check it out. We'll have the links at the end. Also, LinkedIn and YouTube as well. And I think that's a great idea. So this is going to be the first one, correct?
Yes. And it's November 12th. So it's coming up very quickly. And again, the goal is have speakers and the attendance is free too. So anyone who's listening, who's interested, we'll make sure there's the link there. You can join in and get all these informational tips from the experts at no cost.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And what time is it going to be? What's the timeline for that?
Yeah. So it's basically 11:30 to 7:30 Eastern time because we want to make sure that we get, time for those in California, to be able to come in, or even if you're in Hawaii and you want to get up really early, you can start. At least it is during reasonable hours for most of the time zones in the United States. And we'll start with just kind of like an overview at the very beginning at 11:30. We'll have the interview starting around, actually, I believe it's 11 to 7:30. So 11:30 will be the first interview. And then we'll end around, the 7:30 with a final, takeaway, any other questions that anyone might have. And we'll go from there.
Awesome. And just out of curiosity, do you plan on keep doing this? How often do you want to run this? Once a year, once a quarter? What's the plan?
I'm debating on that. I'm thinking maybe twice a year, but this is the first one I'm hosting. And Again, just stepping into something different, seeing how it works, and getting feedback from people to see, is this something that is really important and it's helpful for you? Was it maybe not something that you would be interested in? I think we'll hold it and get feedback and then kind of take that information to make a decision going forward.
I love that. I'm a big believer in just, getting that feedback loop in order to, make decisions. While we're on that subject, is there any, so you already talked about, like you said, the PP loan that was just for a couple of years. So that's something that it's not there anymore. Were there any other kinds of services that you tried offering and, the feedback was just not there? You said, okay, you know what, I might just take it out and just focus on this ones as a core?
Well, it's funny because people will tell me all the time too, like, oh, it would be great if you would teach, certain things. So I had people say they wanted to understand like, the business basics or bookkeeping, tips, or like, what are the tax deductions that I can take? And I would put together like a little webinar or something even, and not have a whole lot of people come. So a lot of people would say, I'm interested, but then in the long run, they, don't come. So I didn't know, like, is it just, it's a topic that you just don't enjoy? So even though if you're saying like, well, I really need that information, because I think a lot of times people will say, oh, I'll just give all the stuff to my CPA and he can figure it out. Right. But a lot of times, if you know certain things ahead of time, you can make better business decisions too, and what can you be doing now to save money on your taxes or other expenses or things like that too. So having a little bit more understanding of your finances is a good thing. Yes, you can have people like me that we do the bookkeeping for you, or your CPA who does the tax for you, but still having kind of a working knowledge of what that is, I think is important. So I would recommend, at least learn a little bit of the basics. But it's so funny how many people will tell me that and then don't want to participate. So I've done that a few times. So we'll see, at some point it may be that I just put another course together and they can do it on their own. They don't have to attend at a certain time. But again, we try and fail. No one's perfect, and we all have failures in business. And of course, the main thing is hopefully you have that long-term success. But I think we try things, see what happens. If it doesn't work, we try something else.
I love that. Speaking of that, is there anything in terms of, like marketing that you've tried that also hasn't worked?
Well, everyone, of course, says you have to be on social media and all the things too. And we are. I have most of my connections are actually on LinkedIn, which makes sense. I'm business to business.
Yeah.
I would say people have said too, well, you should have Instagram and all the things. We have that. That is not as much of a platform that people are connecting with us on, which makes sense. I think it's good for things that are more visual, but we've just decided to start doing some different things. Like I had so many things educational, but it was on the business side and I wasn't showing as much of the personal. And so I had some employees be like, well, just show us kind of what you do in your day. Like it doesn't have to be just business stuff. And so I started doing that where I might take a picture of, I just recently took a picture of all the squash I grew this year. There were multiple varieties, and look, I was just testing things out to see if it worked, right? Here's a picture. So I'm starting to do a little bit more of that too. And I guess that will help with people see me and my personality too, and not just all the things that we do to keep you in compliance or help you understand your profitability, or what can you do to have an efficient company so you could take a vacation, so we are starting to do that, and that's going on Instagram too. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I think a lot of business owners have a little bit of trouble with that, especially B2B. There's a lot of confusion as to, should I be in all the social media? Should I have an account in every single social media channel that there is? Should I not? How do I do it? Like TikTok, like all I see are dances, right? People dancing. Should I also go dancing on TikTok? But it's very different, right? Depending on if you're B2B, B2C, you're a service, product, so on and so forth. Thank you for that. And, just for our younger audience, the ones that are maybe thinking about, they're either students or they are in their first job, they're maybe thinking about starting their entrepreneurial journey. What are some of the challenges that you went through that maybe in that moment you said, I never would have thought this would have been a thing or this would have happened? Just something that all of a sudden came, out of nowhere. Other, of course, than the pandemic. I would love to hear that.
Well, I think, again, not knowing I was going to be an entrepreneur, I didn't know all the things that I needed to plan and prepare for. And even figuring out pricing for services. Like I just came from a job that they paid me an hourly rate, and that's all I knew, And so how do I determine what the price for a service is? How much should I charge for payroll processing, and figuring out, it costs me so much just to buy the software and the time. And, so I would say at first, if you're going to start a business, talk to someone who is in your industry, or maybe go to like SCORE or the small business development centers, really talk to someone who can guide you to help you, because you want to make sure you're profitable and you have enough cash flow. That's another thing too, is a lot of times people don't have all the cash that they need, and then they're cash strapped, they don't have capital, they can't do the things that they thought they were going to do, they can't pay themselves. So making sure that you actually understand what you need for your company to run. And it's okay to lose money, not be profitable if you have cash flow still, right? Cash flow is king at first. Yes, you want to become profitable, but plan for the cash and make sure you have enough in reserves. Like if you're going to start a business, try to put up money away before you ever really start so that you have that, so you're not panicking and you don't have to take whatever customer comes along, because not every customer is a good customer, And so that's what I would recommend too, is just definitely plan for the cash and do something that you really love too. Don't do something just because it looks like it's the hottest thing and that's going to be, oh, we can go make money because we're going to go do this, new thing that's coming out. You may not enjoy it, or it may not even be the hottest thing in a few years, and you don't want to be tied to a business you don't enjoy.
I think that's so true, that shiny object syndrome, right? It's like all of a sudden people are doing this, let's do this. Oh, my competition is offering that, I need to do that as well, right? And then you're all over the place and stop focusing on what your core is. I think a lot of us, I know I've been definitely guilty of this before, and not a lot of business owners, especially I think younger or beginning, business owners do that a lot. So I think it's great, and just, getting out, focusing on a direction and just going there. I really like your advice. And, other than that, if you were to talk, to yourself, like your 20-year-old self, is there anything like, what would you say to you, to the 20-year-old Candy?
Well, I would say, again, at first, I didn't know all the things. And so I was working in an office space, or when I first started, of course, I was going to client locations. But when I first really got into doing the business full time, I had an office space. I was working, especially during like the month after quarter end is the most difficult times, because every government agency has documents that are due, every quarter. And so I was working long hours during those periods of time. And, I felt guilty because I was missing out on some of the family times and things like that too. So I would say, there are going to be times in business that things aren't ideal, right? You maybe have to work more, than you like. But if you can plan into those areas of what you want to be doing and setting some boundaries and not letting the customer determine how you work. I think that was one of the most important things for me too, is, I'm a compassionate person and I would try to help the customer and be there for them. And, people would take advantage of that actually. And so I had to finally set boundaries. I said, I don't give out my cell phone number. I have an office number. I don't need someone reaching out to me on nights and weekends and all the things. And you don't either. You don't have to be like immediately responding to an email or a phone call. Most of the things in business are not emergencies. Now, there may be a few things that come up, but I think sometimes we try to be like that answer and available at all times for the customer, so that they're going to want to use us, right? But a lot of times it does the opposite of what we think it does, and they don't value you as much, right? Because you're just always available. They must be the only person that you have, right? Instead of all the other customers. So I would say just learn to set those boundaries for yourself too, and know that it's okay if you have to like let those slide a little bit periodically, but kind of hold to what you find is important to you and have that family time, have, those things that are, someone can also tell you too, like if you're letting things slide, like have a family member be able to say, you said you were only going to do like these things and you're still doing all these other things too. What about your downtime, your family time? So don't let the business consume you, basically, I think is what I'm trying to say.
No, that's a great answer. I resonate a lot with that, just boundaries, set boundaries. I think boundaries are important in your personal and in your professional life as well. And you did mention also a little bit of that. I think also, people pleasing, it's something that when you first start either in a job or in the business, I think that's something that you either have to grow out of if you want to grow, or you're just going to get stuck where you are because you're going to be trying to please everyone instead of working, on the business and on your professional life. I resonate a lot about that. Thank you. You already mentioned, right? So you have the podcast, Freedom to Thrive Summit is coming up. You just started Instagram as well. What are the plans, for 2026 for you and your company?
Yeah, so now again, I learned about Clockwork. I implemented it in my own company as I was thinking about all the people who are like me who, probably needed to learn how to step away, and for me, it was like, well, what if something happened to me? Or what if, I have older parents and my mother-in-law's aging too. She's a widow and they live in different states. And what if I got a call and I needed to, be able to leave? So it was being able to have the company run without me, whether it was for a vacation or something else. And I was like, how many people are in that space that wouldn't necessarily be able to drop anything and everything and go if needed? And then the certification opened. And so I became certified in the program. And so now I say I marry financial freedom and time freedom. And so I really want to begin working with people who are saying, I just don't know what's going on with my money. I thought it was profitable, but there's no money in the bank, or I'm just working all the time. I don't have the chance to really step away, or even if I take a vacation, it's really not vacation. I'm just working in a different location. I'm checking emails, I'm making phone calls. My family feels like I'm never there for them, and I want to be able to help them really learn how to have success in both of those realms. And so I'm going to be, starting to work with people that are interested in doing both of those together.
I think it's a great goal. And I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that just need that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I know they're going to have a lot of success with that. I know. And, we're coming up to a little bit of the last part of the interview. And I always like asking this question. It's a kind of a weird one, but bear with me for a second. If you had, let's imagine you had like a magic wand that you could just wave, like solve one thing, what would that one thing be?
I think I would like to be able to have more things for my employees too, like better benefits, trying to get all the things, for my staff too, because I value my staff. But it's hard as a small business competing with the big companies a lot of times too. And as the economy gets tougher, the pinch is harder on the customer. So even though all the expenses are, increasing for us too, it's hard to raise rates, and so it becomes even more difficult to do the things for the employees. So I would love to be able to wave a magic wand, have everything where there's plenty of, extra cash so I could give extra bonuses. I could pay all the medical. I could have fabulous vacation. I mean, I would love to be able to tell all my employees too, you all get a 4-week vacation, right? Just like clockwork. We're trying to learn how to step away as business owners. If I could do that for all of my staff too, and like every one of you gets a 4-week vacation, right? That would be awesome. So working towards that, at some point, I believe that will be a reality. It just takes work, right, to get there. So, but if I could waive it and it was already in place, I think that would be it.
I love that. I think you channel your inner Oprah there for a second, right? You get a 4-week vacation. You get a 4-week vacation. You only get a 4-week vacation. I think that was awesome. And Candy, through the interview, we spoke about a lot of things. I did forget to ask you though. You said that you work with service-based businesses. Do you work nationally? Is there like a certain industries that you work with? Just tell me a little bit more about who your customers are in case they're in the audience.
Yeah. So on the bookkeeping side of things, which to me bookkeeping is also like sales tax returns and all of that compliance. We generally work with service-based businesses, and we have quite a few who are in the medical industry. So we don't do the insurance billing, but we have a lot of doctors that, need to have their finances and understand what that is. We have restaurants. I have my largest client is a franchise. He has 7 locations in 2 different states. And so we do everything for him: bookkeeping, payroll, sales tax, all the business licenses. On the payroll side, it really doesn't matter the industry. So we have people in manufacturing and all of that too, but we focus more on like the 1 to 40 staff members. Most of them are actually 10 or less. And a lot of them are actually owners who are S corporations who have to pay themselves reasonable compensation. So anyone can come to us for payroll. They don't have to think they're too small. We'd be happy to help them too. And so those are the businesses that we serve on either the bookkeeping or payroll side. And then on the operational efficiency, it'll be working with those service-based businesses. Again, it may be someone like even in my industry, right? If someone who's in a bookkeeping industry and wants help, or, those types of services, but I'm not trying to go into manufacturing or retail or things like that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you, Candy. I think this has been a great talk. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest on the show today. And just, for the listeners out there, where can we learn more about, the summit, about you and your company as well?
Sure. Well, my website, it doesn't have the summit on there, but the website just for bookkeeping and payroll and things, it's abandp.com, short for Affordable Bookkeeping and Payroll. So you can find how to contact us. All of our social media, the little icons are on the website as well. You can also find all our podcast information on there too. There's a whole page on all the podcast episodes that we air. In terms of the summit, if you want to register, you can just go to freedomtothrivesummit.com and it will have just where you can put your name and email and sign up. It's free. And if anyone is still interested in being a speaker, they can reach out to us at contact@abandp.com, or our phone number is 310-534-5577. And we are still looking for speakers, so it's not too late.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. I will include all of that in the links, in the video down below. Once again, thanks so much for being a guest. I loved having you on the show. And to everyone out there listening, please, if you liked this episode, you got something from it, please, like, comment, and subscribe. It'll help us reach more people. This has been Candy Messer and Oscar A. Orta, the Lead Skills Show. Thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.